Domain expansion, the most supreme technique of any Jujutsu sorcerer and is considered the pinnacle of Jujutsu sorcery. We saw 5 domain expansion in the first season of the anime. The information we know about the domain expansion is that it is achieved by expanding one's innate domain with cursed energy while using a barrier to construct it inside a separate space. The caster then imbues their cursed technique within the barrier to complete the expansion, allowing them to kill their opponent with that cursed energy with a guaranteed hit, also called as sure hit or must hit effect or can't miss attack. When the sorcerer are about to cast their domain, they do a specific hand sign which is unique to the sorcerer and is required to expand someone's respective domain. In a recent chapter of manga, it was shown that the knowledge about domains lies in the prefrontal cortex of the right brain of a sorcerer. Domain expansion is a much complex technique which makes it rare even among the grade 1 sorcerers. So to fully understand it, you must know about the 3 types of domain, which are lethal, non-lethal and incomplete domains. So the first one is lethal domain. Lethal domain expansion required great skill and cursed energy to construct. Not only do they require the user to manifest a massive artificial environment, but they must be able to cast their own barrier and infuse it with their innate curse technique at the same time. Any innate curse technique that are infused with the barrier are guaranteed to hit their opponent. For this sure hit or guaranteed hit effect, this type of domain is considered as lethal. But there is an exception. In case of Kinji Hikari, his ideal death gamble has a sure hit effect, but it's not lethal. It only transfers information to its target in exchange for faster technique activation and strength in a class of domain. The sorcerers sometimes reveal their techniques to gain power and speed. It's like a binding vow. By giving something valuable, you can gain something valuable in return. In lethal domains, the sure hit effect will work if the caster casts a barrier and infuse the curse technique with the barrier. However, Kinjaku and Sukuna are the only sorcerers who can expand a lethal domain without enclosing their barrier, yet still retain a sure hit effect. It is mentioned in the manga that it's like painting in the air instead of a canvas, which makes it a truly divine technique. But it seems like the lethal domain users cannot control their sure hit effect, so they use some kind of rule or binding vow. For example, inside Gojo's domain, the person who is in direct contact with Gojo can be immune to his domain, as we saw in the anime when he held Yuji, so Yuji wasn't affected by the infinite void. This was also shown in the fight between Gojo and Sukuna in recent chapter of manga. In the case of Sukuna, his innate curse technique, which is dismantle and cleave, will continue to destroy inanimate objects, objects with cursed energy and living things within his domain until he deactivates his domain. As for the smallpox deity, the sure hit effect will automatically target the opponent with the highest curse energy. The next one is non-lethal domains. A non-lethal domain is similar to a lethal domain, but it doesn't include the sure hit effect. This means the sorcerer manifests an artificial environment within their domain, but they can't infuse their curse technique with the barrier. During the Heian era, which is considered the golden age of Jujutsu, sorcerers often used non-lethal domains. These domains trapped their opponents in a space and forced them to obey the rule of the domain, and the sorcerers made binding vows to establish rules within their domains. For example, Hiromi Higurama's deadly sentencing is a non-lethal domain that manifests a courtroom inside his domain and forces his opponent into a trial. As it's a non-lethal domain and it doesn't grant a sure hit effect, it could be lethal if you are trapped for a long time, and it's also depend on the rules. When Yuji was trapped in deadly sentencing, from the first trial, Yuji could not use cursed energy, and from the second trial, Yuji received the death penalty, and Hiromi obtained an executioner's sword that could kill Yuji if he were to be cut by it. The next one is incomplete domains. Incomplete domains are expanded using only cursed energy without an embedded cursed technique, even if they include a barrier, and the same applies to the domain without a fully enclosed barrier. This means that if sorcerers cast their domain with a fully enclosed barrier but do not infuse their curse technique with the barrier, it is considered as incomplete domain. Similarly, if sorcerers infuse their curse technique but cast a barrier that is not fully closed, it is also considered as incomplete domain. Closing the barrier fully and infuse it with their curse technique enables the domain's sure hit effect. Without that, the sorcerer will only receive an enhanced curse technique without a sure hit effect. For example, Megumi's Chimera Shadow garden is an incomplete domain. Without enclosing the barrier and infusing it with his curse technique, Megumi's domain doesn't have a guaranteed hit. As domain expansion is a supreme technique that provides a great advantage, it also costs an immense amount of cursed energy. In recent manga chapters, we have learned that Gojo and Sukuna are the only individuals who can use domain expansion multiple times in one day. Kinji Hikari is only capable of casting it repeatedly after hitting his domain's jackpot. When he hits the jackpot in his domain, he can replenish the cursed energy used while casting his current domain, allowing him to cast his domain again and again. If a sorcerer's domain gets destroyed by the opponent, they can't use their innate curse technique for a certain period of time because the technique burns out and needs time to heal before they can reuse it. This is a massive disadvantage in a fight. As domain expansion is a supreme technique and also grants a sure hit effect, there is 3 ways to counter a domain expansion. The first one is to use an anti-domain technique, the defense against the can't miss attack of a domain, and for those who cannot use their own domain expansion are anti-domains technique such as New Shadow Style, Simple Domain, Hollow Whisker Basket, and the Falling Blossom Emotion. These techniques neutralize the innate curse technique infused with the barrier in order to nullify the guaranteed hit effect. The second way is to break the domain from outside. Domains are reinforced with cursed energy to make them stronger from the inside. The more the barrier is reinforced from the inside, the more vulnerable it becomes to breaking from the outside. In specific situations, an ally of the sorcerer can break it from the outside to rescue them. For example, Yuji broke Mahito's domain from outside to save Nanami, but it could be risky because the ally can also become the target for domain's guaranteed hit effect. According to Gojo, the most effective way to counter a domain is to expand your own domain, as we saw in the anime, which is the third way to counter a domain. This will cause a clash of domains where the most refined domain will dominate. In the case of a clash between two equally refined domains, the sure hit effect will cancel each other out, and the domain users need to fight with their domains open. However, the moment one user takes heavy damage or their domain collapses, the other's sure hit attack will immediately strike. Using domain expansion, users can escape from the domains of their opponent, but it's very rare. For example, in the fight between Megumi and Dagon, Megumi used his domain to escape from Dagon's domain. The barrier of domains have an edge through which anyone trapped inside can exit the domain using their own domain. However, for those who are trapped inside, it's nearly impossible to find the edge. Megumi in this case came from outside into Dagon's domain and touched the edge, allowing him to learn the position of the edge, but in most cases it's very rare. So that's all for today's video. If you enjoyed it, make sure to subscribe to the channel, and to know about the current fights in Jujutsu Kaisen manga, click on the video on your screen.